Dr. Stephen Thaler, from my previous episode, created his own AI without the data, without doing it like ChatGPT, because really, as he says, and listen to him, that whole creator, humans are creating the opinions that you love. They're curating them. It's not free AI like his DABUS. It's AI that's controlled by opinions of human beings, trying to sort through opinions of human beings. And there's no emotion. So how do you get emotion, and how can we see AI somewhat differently except ChatGPT? Let's dive in with Dr. Thaler and listen to how the human brain works and how he designed this like the human brain. All things being equal, I'm not talking about any legal suits or anything like that, but let's say you come out with this thing and it was able to be recognized, and Davos is able to be recognized and used like you would want to, maybe even gets $100 million. What would its, like, what would you see sort of it acting out and doing? What would its purpose be to be able to justify the both investment, but also the incredible exploration you're actually doing into consciousness and sentience?
If I had the $100 million, well, I could beat the pants off of what's out there, for one thing. Plus, there would be the draw of talking to something that has its own opinion. When we talk to some of these chatbots online, we're looking at the cumulative opinion of many contractors out there. So it
Right.
is not the thoughts of machine intelligence. It's the thought of contractors who are, giving their 0 to 4 point ratings of various prompt and response scores. And
Yeah.
it's not really sentient. It's not really conscious, nor is it really thinking for itself. I mean, in the beginning, I love to ask, well, what were you thinking of before I came online and prompted you?
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm not conscious. I'm not sentient. It's sort of an autoimmune type of AI that can tear itself apart, and basically diminish itself.
But really, you're just creating something that can make its own decisions. And so the goal is that sort of a measure, if lack of a better word, of sentience, that it will have have emotions, but have an emotional context, maybe.
Back in the late 80s, I discovered that I could get two neural networks to brainstorm with each other. One was a generator, another one was a critic, and the critic had control over the disturbances being injected into the generator. And the generator, mind you, is producing a stream of potential ideas, and their originality depends upon the overall strength of those perturbations.
Right.
Uh, and what I discovered was, well, if it was tasked with solving a problem and within a given period of time it did not come up with a solution, the critic would inject more of those disturbances into the generator. And I said,
Hmm.
that looks like consciousness. You have a stream of consciousness, a stream of ideas coming apparently from out of nowhere. And you also have a critic, and there are many critic functions within the brain, and it's looking at the stream and it's getting frustrated. It's not coming up with the idea. So what does it do? It injects more of those disturbances. So if you look closely at what happens in neurotransmitter secretion in the brain, I mean, there are two avenues. You can either have a direct path where one neuron is transmitting a packet of neurotransmitters to another,
Mhm.
or you can have a situation in which the whole cortex is being suffused with neurotransmitters with no direct target. It's the whole thing. It's called volume or global release. And that's what the disturbances were looking like. They were looking like the global release of neurotransmitters.
Hmm.
So if you look at what happens within neurotransmitter release, there's nothing magical about a neurotransmitter. It's a molecule, and basically there's a current coming through the synaptic gap, and you can either increase it or decrease it randomly, stochastically, and that's your noise. Has nothing to do with magic messages being transmitted. So at that point, I said, okay, here is how the system gets upset. It's not finding a solution to a problem. But then it was, I think, more realistically, proto consciousness because it really wasn't scaling to the human dimension. It was missing what I would call subjective feelings.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, think back in the very beginning, I had one neural network generating potential ideas. I had another one watching
Yeah.
those ideas, monitoring them, and supplying feedback to inject more or less of these neurotransmitters or the neurotransmitter simulations. But the output of the critic was numerical.
Hmm.
In other words, here are some new ultra hard material prospects, and the critic would say, okay, well, that's a hardness of 9.3, this one's 4.5, and so forth. Human brains don't think like that. What they
Hmm.
do is imagine the consequences of something that's being imagined. And if something really rings a bell, then is frozen in as a new idea, the memory of
Hmm.
an idea. So I departed from the whole paradigm of generating numbers to
Yeah.
represent the goodness of anything. I personally do not calculate numbers representing goodness of any idea. What I
Yeah.
see are the repercussions in my brain. And of course, there's cortex, and there's also an eye called the thalamus looking up at the
Hmm.
cortex and
Hmm.
monitoring the multimedia show. And there's also prefrontal cortex, which is basically keeping track of what fits and what doesn't. I mean, is a plausible combination of neuron activations. So that's what I did. I departed from this whole idea of using numbers. And
Hmm.
you can think of the creativity machine, which was the first patent family,
Right.
generating ideas and they're passed to another neural network. You can start to imagine DABUS by thinking, okay, well, don't directly talk to the critic. How about a long associative chain of ideas that lead to that critic? So that you think of a long, slender tendril or thread reaching out to the critic, and it's a matter of associations. So that was the whole idea of using neural modules containing memories,
Hmm.
and that's the alphabet of the brain, and allowing them to hook up into long associative chains.